All right, we're going holding by Pirkei Avos, ethics of our fathers. Again, we're going holding by Pirkei Avos, ethics of our fathers. We are in chapter 2, Mishnah 16. This is part 47. There'll be part 48, 49, probably part 50. As we go through this again, we're going to work on holding by Pirkei Avos, ethics of our fathers, chapter 2, Mishnah 16. That's part 47. The Mishnah said, in the name of Rabbi Yeshua, an evil eye, evil inclination, hatred of other people, remove a person from this world. So the last number of weeks we've been speaking about evil inclination, the Yetzer Hara, as it is known, and we mentioned last week this idea that the evil inclination does not come to a person and say, I want you to desecrate Shabbos, right? I want you to, do idolatry. I want you to, whatever it is, something major. The evil inclination is not going to come at a person straight away. What the evil inclination will do, it will come step by step, right? Little by little. Evil inclination got a lot of patience, as we mentioned many times, and even if it doesn't succeed, now, it'll succeed, it'll try tomorrow, try the next day, try third day, try fourth day, right, etc. So, so the bottom line is, as we said, the evil inclination is not going to come, right, and try and hammer a person, to get through something, do something really bad. What's evil inclination going to do? It's going to take step by step, right? All the evil inclination needs, in general, is a opening, right? That's what the evil inclination, that's what the evil inclination needs. Now, we mentioned before, what does the evil inclination want? In general, the evil inclination very good at its job, definitely doesn't need me to agree. But the evil inclination, as Tosfos Yontif, one of the great commentaries on the Mishnah, says it means the majority of desire. Right? The evil inclination, again, wants to try and trap us, destroy us, convince us to do the wrong, right? Convince us to do the wrong thing. Now, we're in a time where now, people are very busy, getting ready for Sukkot. We came out of Rosh Hashanah, just came out of Yom Kippur. You have the 10 days of repentance. You go through Yom Kippur, right? The ultimate day, the ultimate day of atonement, right? And fasting and all that. So the evil inclination, right? We'll see what it does at this time of year, right? So a Jew has the entire month of Elul to prepare, right? Prepare for Yom Adin, for the day of judgment, right? Judgment of the whole world. In general, judgment of each individual, right? Jews or non-Jews. We say it's the birth. It's the creation of man. We don't say creation of Jews, right? So everybody got judged on Rosh Hashanah. Whatever decrees were made. 10 days of repentance could overturn that decree. Very good. And then you have Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur, the ultimate day of atonement. Many say that even a person has an opportunity to Hoshana Rabbah, right? The last day, 5th day of Sukkot, right? Really the last day, or 6th day, really, 6th day of Sukkot. You still have time, right? You still have time in order to overcome a bad decree. But in general, that decree, as we mentioned before, is most likely sealed on Yom Kippur. Now, comes on the evil inclination. So the evil inclination says, okay, I've given you a month, right? I didn't, probably didn't interfere that much, let's say. doesn't interfere too much. Maybe does, maybe doesn't, whatever. Yeah, it gives you a month to prepare. Gives you a month, to want to work on yourself, to strive to take on things you want to fix and how you're going to fix them and all these things. Very good. Then it gets you all excited. You go through Rosh Hashanah, you get all inspired, right? Then you have 10 days of repentance, right? 10 days of repentance come, give you an opportunity to draw closer, right? You be more introspective, you're more careful. Then you go through the ultimate day of Yom Kippur, right? A tremendous, tremendous day, spirituality. We're imitating the angels. We don't eat, we don't drink, right? We're fasting, and we're working on repentance. We say vidu in confession, we say a number of times, right? Number of times, and during Musaf, the additional service on the day of Yom Kippur, we get on our hands and knees, right? 5 times we get on our hands and on our hands and our knees. Right? We bow down to the one God. So Muslims, which we don't really care either way, but Muslims say, oh, look, the Jews do it one day a year. They get on their hands and knees one day a year to pray. Yeah, we're going to show them we're much better. Yeah, we're much greater. We're going to do it every day. We're going to get on our knees every day. Good. Let them get on their knees every day. Let them think, let them think they're so much better. Okay. So you go through the day of Yom Kippur. And it's a tremendous day if we do what we're supposed to do. And your slate is clean for the most part, right? Unless there are sins between man and man, right? Then you have to ask your fellow man for forgiveness, etc. But, let's say all things being equal, you did what you were supposed to do. Yeah, very good. You have a clean slate. You have a totally clean slate. Then what happens after Yom Kippur? 4 days later, 4 days after Yom Kippur, comes all the Sukkot. Right? So, God wants you to go from mitzvah to mitzvah. Right? You're on a high at this point, or should be, let's say, on a high at this point, from Rosh Hashanah, 10 days of repentance, Yom Kippur, and now you're busy with Sukkah. Now, the end of Yom Kippur came Thursday night. So you get Friday, you have Shabbos, right? You have tomorrow, you have Sunday, and then Monday night is Sukkot everywhere in the world. So people are busy now running around getting the 4 species, right? The arbor meaning, getting the lulav, their esrog, their willows. Probably get their willows tomorrow, let's say, because they dry out very quickly. Nonetheless, and you get your myrtle leaves, your hadassim, right? So now you don't have that much time. So what a lot of people probably have done is they build their sukkahs, or most of their sukkah before, right? They build it before, like within the month of El. And they got their 4 species, probably sometime after Rosh Hashanah. Maybe some got before Rosh Hashanah, I don't know, but probably sometime after Rosh Hashanah. They got the majority of their species, right? The 4 species. Now, again, it's a busy time. So you got, also comes the holiday, right? Outside of Israel, you're going to have 4 meals, one at night and one during the day. Your sukkah has to be built, right? So it has to be reinforced, from the elements outside. Obviously, some places stronger, some places not. Depends where you live, right? Regardless, so you don't have that much time. And then you're going to cook all these meals also, right? So in between getting your 4 species, in between building your sukkah, you're busy doing all these mitzvahs. Very good, right? And then you're going to make all these meals. So there's also tension. Even though it's time of great joy, you're putting up decorations, you're beautifying the sukkah, you're getting your 4 species, person got a budget also, right? Mitzvahs cost geld, as we would say, mitzvahs cost money. So the sukkah you can build from almost anything, the sukkah itself probably the least expensive. Right? Well, you love an esrog can cost money. It can certainly cost money, everyone within their means, but everything we do, we want to beautify the mitzvah. Good? So we want to beautify the mitzvah. Now, what comes with all this? Tension. Right? A lot of tension. Potential. Why? A lot to do. Right? And if you live in a Jewish neighborhood, people are running around, flying around like no tomorrow. Right? Stores tomorrow. And a lot of Jewish communities going to be packed. Right? Shopping and getting their stuff or whatever. Right? So, with that comes, self-wellness. You have to, what is self-wellness? You have to have patience. You have to have patience. Now, there's a lot of things going on, right? Not to mention, let's say, a financial strain, right? But even let's say a person has money, even if you had money, even if you didn't have any worries, that way, still lots to do, right? Tremendous amount to do. But you think about it, you say, wow, it's a lot of excitement, right? It's a lot of action. Someone has family, everyone gets involved, right? You put it up the schach, you put it up, you put up the walls. If you have to put up walls, you're decorating, you're getting things ready. You have to clean out the sukkah. It's got to be, floor's got to be clean. Like, okay. Even though there's a lot to do, it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun involved also, right? Even though there's stress. So now, it's a good time also work on character traits in many ways. Comes on the holiday of Sukkot. Right now, depending on weather, some places can be cold, can be whatever, cold enough. Person may have trouble sitting in the sukkah. If you live in England, like it's I wouldn't say it's the greatest mitzvah. Living there. Why? It's cold. First of all, it's cold. Second of all, it rains all the time. So they have so people have these roofs that they put on these roofs on top of the schach, even though the sukkah is not kosher, but they'll sit the sukkah anyway. But again, even with that, then you have Simchas Beis Shuvavos. You have most synagogues, a lot of synagogues, in the area or whatever will have these we'll have bands, we'll have people singing, and dancing, whatever. It's time of great joy, right? As Gemara says, anyone who never saw Simchas Beis Shuvavos, this water libation ceremony, whatever, in the temple, doesn't know what Simcha is. They don't know what true enjoyment is. Okay, right? So we've come out of Yom Kippur, right? We're ecstatic, or we should be ecstatic. Hopefully, we did the right thing, right? We did enough. We did enough repentance. Sukkot, time of great joy. Time of great joy. Now again, there are other things the evil inclination can come up with, during the holiday to put a damper on things. Let's say most places in Israel, most people live in apartment buildings. So you have sukkahs in every building, let's say, or some with a sukkah on the ground floor, whatever it may be. There's noise. You want to go to sleep, 10 o'clock, 10:30 at night. You have neighbors making noise. Or let's say you hear music coming from one of these parties, so you can hear the music, or whatever. You hear cars going by, let's say, during the week, or this and that. So there are things that the evil inclination come in and say, wow, what a beautiful mitzvah. You're sleeping in the sukkah, everything's good. Other people, make a lot of noise, stay up late, right? Let's say, your car's making noise, you got buses going, late at night, so you get a combination of a lot of things where it can stir a person. It can bother somebody, right? You want to sleep, at least get halfway decent night's sleep. It's, here in Israel, again, it's easy. The weather's warmer. Yeah, it's gonna be beautiful sleep in the sukkah weather next week. Or this coming week. All right, it's not gonna be too hot. It's not gonna be too hot, it's not gonna be too cold. Right? So again, you're finding the elements, but even with that, people are not gonna get people are not going to get deterred by it, even though the evil inclination is going to try and work hard, and make you not enjoy the holiday as much or whatever. But even if, let's say, a person overcame that, they had a great time, whatever. Okay, what happens? The last day of Sukkot, Simchas Torah. If you can't sing and dance on that day, you got the serious problem spiritually. I don't think there's any question. That's like, one of the greatest days of joy, during the year. Is on Simchas Torah. They take all the Torah scrolls out, everyone sings and dances for hours, whatever. Very good. So let's say a person's into that, sang and dance, by the end of the week, by the end of Sukkot, like totally exhausted. Yeah, totally exhausted. Okay. So the evil inclination will say, I'll even let you sing and dance a lot. I'll let you listen to the music. Maybe I won't bother you as much during the holiday. It'll let you have all this holiness. Yeah? But what's the evil inclination doing here? The evil inclination not stupid. The evil inclination can come along, give you everything you want during these days. right? Again, during the 30-day period of the month of Elul, you got 10 days of repentance, you got Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, you got, time of great joy and Sukkot. All things being equal, evil inclination can say, give me your best shot, right? Give me your best shot. I won't interfere too much. Yeah? Why? Again, I'm not saying the evil inclination can't interfere, but let's say, he says, I'm going to let up a little bit. How about you have the greatest time on Sukkot? You're going to sing, you're going to dance, you're going to, all these things. Beautiful. Why is evil inclination not worried? Because evil inclination knows what comes after Sukkot. Comes after Sukkot, day after Sukkot, night after Sukkot, what do? What's the person doing? They are taking down the Sukkah, bringing everything in, putting things in storage. Okay, it takes time, takes effort. You take care of that. And then after Sukkot, that next Shabbos, right, in 2 weeks, Sukkot is going to be done. Right? Well, Sukkot will be done here on a Wednesday. Everyone else on a Thursday. And then you go into Shabbos. What's that Shabbos? That Shabbos, the Shabbos Bracious. That's the first Shabbos, right? That's going to be the first Shabbos where we start reading the book from the very beginning of creation, right? The book of Genesis. Very good, because on Simchas Torah, you finish the entire Torah, right? And then you start from the beginning, right? With the book of Genesis, right? And then what happens? Then we go in every day. Then we go back to normal. Then we go back to normal schedule. The next holiday, by the way, after Sukkot is going to be Hanukkah. So you get 2 months, 2.5 months, more than 2.5 months. Yeah, Cheshvan does not have any holidays. That's why it's called Mar Cheshvan, bitter Cheshvan. Why it's called bitter? Because there's no holidays, right? You have no holidays. So now you're going into the everyday. So now the Yetzer Hara says, okay, now I gave you all this time. I gave you all this time to prepare. I gave you all this time, right? I gave you all this time in order what? In order that you had an opportunity to prepare. You had a golden opportunity to prepare. Now, where's all that preparation go? What happens to all that preparation? Comes on the evil inclination and says, okay, now I'm going to own you. What's the evil inclination going to do? It's going to make your life a living misery. It's going to give you different things to deal with. Even if you had to deal with them before, now it's more intense. Because now I don't have the cushion. I don't have all the singing and dancing. Yeah, I don't have Yom Kippur. I don't have Great Day of Atonement. I don't have Day of Judgment. Right? We should be working on ourselves after Yom Kippur. Doesn't mean after Yom Kippur everything dies. Right? What I decide to take on just goes by the wayside and everything else. You got to implement. Right? Now, implementation is hard. Why? Right? Rav Yitzchak Salanter, a blessed memory, founder of the Musar movement, the ethics movement back in the 1800s, right back in the 1800s, said it's hard to change one character trait. One character trait. No, I want multiple character traits. One. Even to change one in your lifetime. Okay. So what's the hardest part over here? You'll say change. Okay. So we say that if you're going to take on something to do, you want to take on something you want to fix. Very good. Right? Whatever it's going to be, cut it in half, then cut it in a quarter. Why? So you can do it. So you can do it on a daily basis. Right? One example. Yeah. The world in general, most people curse. That's what they do. That's how they speak. Yeah? Like I say, everybody, not every last person, most people curse. Yeah, I'm not going to say how many times a day. A lot of people curse. So a person wants to work on that, take an hour, half an hour, and say, during this time, whatever I do, I'm not going to curse, no matter what happens. Could be the hardest day, hardest hour of the day, or half hour of the day. Okay. But the more a person works on that, continues to do that, then they hear somebody curse, they're like, ew, can't believe someone speaks like that. But what? You were any different the day before, 2 days before? Right? You have a higher sensitivity. When you have a higher sensitivity over time, right, it's going to make you stronger. Same thing when it's about not speaking Lashon Hara, not speaking badly against others. Everybody does it. Yeah, everyone is guilty of it. So you have to learn. You have to learn the laws very well, right? You have, you learn 2 laws a day. The book, the Chofetz Chaim, two laws a day, 2 halachas a day, right? And guard in your tongue. Be careful what you say. The whole rest of the world could care less. Everyone else says whatever they want. They make fun of other people. This, that, very good. Yeah, but if you say, listen, half an hour a day, an hour a day, whatever it is, I'm not going to speak Lashon Hara during that time. Yeah, you also have a higher awareness. But again, these things, whatever a person takes on, yeah, you want to make sure it's not above what you can do. If it's above what you can do, you won't do it. Not only won't you do it, you'll give up hope. You say, see, I tried, I failed. I tried last year and I failed. Okay. Yeah, this is a new year. This is a new time. Right? But the evil inclination knows that. The evil inclination very aware. So what's the evil inclination going to do? Put things in your path. Right? Put things as a stumbling block. In order that what? In order that you give up hope. That's what the evil inclination wants. But what happened to everything you built up? What happened to all these slichos, all these penitential prayers? What happened to Yom Kippur? What happened to all the singing and dancing on Sukkot? Where did it all go? Where did all that bent up energy, where'd it go? You're going to say, wow, the weather's crummy. Other things going on. I'm having difficulty now and other, whatever, or the same difficulty, whatever it is. The everyday thing doesn't go away. So the evil inclination gives you a golden opportunity. Golden opportunity. You want to sing a dance? Go sing a dance. You want to stay up to the middle of the night and sing a dance? Beautiful. Yeah, you want to shake your love like no tomorrow? Beautiful. You want to do all these things? No problem. Come after Sukkot. The evil inclination says you're not ready. You're not ready to implement what you're supposed to do. The evil inclination is going to say you're toast. The evil inclination is going to come along and say you're mine. Because the evil inclination understands. Understands these are days of great joy. Yeah? Great inspiration. Right? People should feel like they're walking on air. They're walking on air. They're busy, building their sukkahs. They're busy, they went through this. They're busy working on themselves. Tremendous. Now, it doesn't mean there's no evil inclination at this point. Plenty of evil inclination. Even during that time. But the evil inclination can let up. The evil inclination can say, I'll give you all that time. I'll grant it to you on a platter. Yeah? There's not going to be any problem. Right? There's not going to be any problem over here. But what do we see? What happened right after Yom Kippur? Right? A person wouldn't check the news, see what's going on. Terrorist attack in Manchester. 2 people killed on Yom Kippur. Yeah, there was some terrorist attacks foiled here. Right? In Israel, now you're getting back to the real world. Right? This is the real world. Yom Kippur, okay. Granted. You had that day, whatever. Good. But people didn't come out unscathed. Yeah, that can bring down the level over here. Because then you give it, you're in short, a person would say in synagogue most of the day, and you're working, you're striving, this, that. You hear the news, you're like, what's it all worth? What's it all worth? Look, another terrorist attack. Look, another thing going on here. Another thing going on over here. So even at that point, the evil inclination should come and say, I'm going to cool you down. I'm going to cool you down. No matter what level, high, whatever, that you think you have, and you think you're walking on air, they're going to be problems. And they're always going to be problems. Yeah, whether outside of us or not. Yeah, we got our own problems. Very good. Very, very good. So the evil inclination comes along and says, even on Yom Kippur, even Yom Kippur, I'm gonna make people feel. And what's the feeling that a person would have? A person, worked on themselves, this, that. They hear the news. Let's say right after they hear the news. It's deflating. Totally deflating. Yeah. Everything you worked up for, boom, another test. Another thing. So comes along the evil inclination, wants to cool a person down. And we always say if a person is on a spiritual high, you hang on to it for as long as possible because we're not going to be able to hold on to it for very long. Right? So you got to run with it. You got to work with it, as much as possible. But then you feel deflated. You totally feel deflated. I could have done more. I could have this, could have that. Right? Everything depends on us. Everything depends on how we act. Everything depends on how we pray. Right? There's a lot of pressure. Right? There's a tremendous amount of pressure. Even with that, let's say nothing happened. Right? Make it very easy. Let's say nothing happened. Everything went according to nature. Yeah? No terrorist attacks, no people being killed, everything's good. So again, what does the evil inclination do? The evil inclination can say, I'll leave you alone. I'll leave you alone for now. But when's the real test? See, the real test comes when you're not on a high anymore. The real test comes, quote unquote, when you're back in the real world. So you say, but I'm already in the real world. Right? Person had to work, they do other things. They're already in the real world. Very good. Where's my mind supposed to be? Even when I'm in quote unquote that real world. Where's my mind supposed to be? My mind's supposed to be in what I'm supposed to be doing. Right? And my connection to God. Sometimes better, sometimes not. Don't matter. Right? That's where my mind should be. But the world takes its toll. Right? Takes its toll on a person. You see now, right, without getting into politics, so you got this whole, peace treaty on the line now. With Trump and and the Arabs and whatever, Hamas and this and that. Yeah, gotta give them a certain amount of time, not telling Israel not, stop bombing. Gotta give them an opportunity to respond. They're somewhat, Hamas somewhat responding in a good way. You want to ask me my personal opinion, they're not gonna uphold it. They're not gonna lay down their weapons. Right? The whole thing's a waste of time. They're not gonna lay down their weapons. If they did, it'd be an absolute miracle. Yeah, absolute miracle. But regardless, now they're giving more time. What are you giving them more time for? Why in the world are you giving them more time? Now, we're going to negotiate, we're going to get all the hostages out, this and that. They're never going to agree. They're never going to agree to lay down their weapons. Oh, but they gave some positive feedback. Positive feedback means nothing. They never uphold anything they say. Anyway, they break every agreement. Okay. Right? We're not getting into politics. But you hear something like that, like, come on. Right, this is the best that there is. It's like an ongoing saga. It's like a bad soap opera, like a really bad soap opera. But it ends up the same way. Totally ends up the same way. Now, with all that, isn't that depressing? Of course, depressing. Hoss been there for 2 years. Supposedly got 20 lives, supposedly, right? But look at all these, all these ones that are dead. Also, it's a horrific thing across the board. So even in the time judgment, time of compassion, is Yom Kippur, you go back into the everyday and you hear this. Or here there's another terrorist attack. Here, isn't it better? Right? Isn't it better, I would say, not to listen to the news? No, there's a war, you find out about it, as a friend of mine would say. Yeah. That's depressing. To come out of Yom Kippur. You come out of Yom Kippur, you hear. You hear the news. You heard what happened. It's tragic. Yeah. If it comes on the evil inclination, now normally I would say, okay, things can happen, even on a holiday, okay, even on a, super duper holiday like Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, okay. The person's been in the synagogue for so long, that's deflating. Right? That is deflating. The only way a person try and stay at whatever level is you got to take what you have. You got to give a little bit of a fetch, a little bit of a sigh, right? And you have to move on. You can't blow it off totally, but you have to move on. Because if not, this is exactly what the evil inclination wants. The evil inclination wants to cool you down, right? Comes along Yom Kippur. After Yom Kippur, you hear the saying, right? What should our focus be after Yom Kippur? Building your sukkah. Getting your 4 species. Now, it's a lot more complicated now. Why? Because Yom Kippur came on a Thursday, right? So now you also have to prepare for Shabbos, right? So you only have 4 days to get all this busy time. But the focus on the everyday is depressing. It is depressing, right? What do I have to focus on? What's the most important thing? I have to focus on my own life. I have to focus on being close to God. That's my goal, right? That's what I'm here for. But the Ramchal says, Path of the Just says, and Derech Hashem says in both places, right? In the way of God, he says, you're in this world to toil. So you have good times, you have bad times, you have anywhere in between. Yeah? But for a person to stay on the level in spiritual terms, this is something you got to work hard at. Okay. So it comes on the evil inclination because I can give it to you really easy. Really, really easy. I give you all this time to sing and dance, prepare yourself, work on yourself. And let's say nothing happens. Let's say everything's going great. Livelihood's going great. Family's great. Like all these things are going great, which probably not. But let's say, right? You come into sukkah's even better. You're singing, you're dancing, you're like, unbelievable. But what is the evil inclination going to do? The evil inclination, again, will try and interfere, different things. But even if it doesn't, everything's good. The bottom line is, everything is good, beautiful. Comes after Simchas Torah, the day after Simchas Torah. The evil inclination now going to come as a ball of fire. Because the evil inclination is going to say, okay, I gave you all this time to prepare. Now what am I going to do? I am now going to work hard against you. Let's see if what you decided to take on that level, how long is that going to last? Yeah? How long is that going to last? Right? That's the test. Right? That is the test. Now, the evil inclination comes very strong. Very, very strong. In different ways in order to cool you down. But see, during the time you had the chance to build it up, evil inclination could be, I'm not saying will be, evil inclination kind of quiet. But probably not the case, yeah? Probably, alive and well and making our lives a misery. Okay. But even if the evil inclination is quiet, relatively quiet, he's working. Yeah, he's on, he's thinking in different ways, what he's going to do, this and that. But he doesn't have to work that hard. Why doesn't he have to work that hard? Very simple. Because he knows that the holiday season is going to end. And once the holiday season ends, then the question becomes, okay, now what? Now what are you going to do? Right? Now what are you going to do? How are you going to go in the everyday? Are you going to do it like last year? You going to do it like the year before? You going to do it like 2 years before? What? What are you going to do different now? How are you going to show me that you want to work on something? Where's the effort going to go? So the evil inclination comes along. And the evil inclination, as we always say, very good at what it does. Right? Extremely good at what it does. Comes along the evil inclination and hit you over the head. Now, it doesn't have to be something so strong. Yeah, but at the end of the day, right, this is really the $1,000,000 question. At the end of the day, how is that fire going to be kept lit? That's the question. Yeah. In other words, you've been singing and dancing, you've been doing all these things, reading all these inspiring things. And now I go back to the everyday grind. Now, you're in the fall going towards winter. Right? You're going back to the everyday. No holidays coming up for another 2 months. for another 2.5 months. So now, how long can that fire be lit from what I did the last month? Last 40 days, let's say 50 days, including Sukkot. For a long time. You have a long time to soak it in, so to speak, to work on it. So you had 10, so good. So you had Rosh Hashanah, you had 10 days of repentance, you had Yom Kippur, you had Sukkot. Yeah? So basically you had 10 days, and another 7 days, right? It's, it's 20 days, let's say. Let's say you had 20 days altogether. Plus the month of El. But you have this time to be inspired. You have all this time to be inspired. Are we going to take the inspiration and use it for what we need it for? Or as we always say, are we going to let the idea, or not, I shouldn't say the idea, but are we going to allow ourselves to succumb to self-pity because we get beaten down in life? Now, for a lot of people, or some people, that's a game changer. Why? Because whatever a person goes through, and everyone has their hardship, right? Everybody has their hardship, whether it's health, whether it's livelihood, whether it's family, whether it's all three things all together. Yeah. We all have hardship. Everyone has it. The question is, are we going to allow the hardship and allow the evil inclination to destroy us or not? Now you're going to say, I don't have a choice. Not true. That for sure is not true. Right? How do I know it's not true? How do I know it's not true? Because we believe God never puts a person in a situation they can't handle. Even if we ourselves think we can't handle it. But see, it takes away, and the evil inclination knows this, it takes away from proper function in life. Because a person, in general, and we are generally very weak, as it is, right? Our psyches are very weak. So any little thing, what I've seen by some people, any little thing can throw them into a tizzy. Right? Someone told me I went out somewhere, said, well, how's you going to fix it? I said, well, I don't have any spare light bulbs. I said, yeah, eventually I'll get to it. I mean, the room's not totally black. I said, I'll get to it. They're like, well, why don't you get to it right now? I said, well, I'm busy. Busy doing other things, not a priority. Right? But this person's like, well, fix it. I said, I'll get to it. I'm not going to get to it right this second. I'll get to it. It's priorities. But for some people, any little thing that goes wrong, okay, if it's a major thing, you fix it immediately, much as you can. Otherwise, you get to it. It's not a major thing. Now, for some people, you don't leave it. You get someone or figure out how to fix it. Little things can throw some people into a tizzy. Little things. Major things all the more so. Right? If a person doesn't have Torah and mitzvahs, in general, and something major happens, people go on their minds. I don't, persons, whether a Jew or non-Jew, or, even non-Jews holding by no-hide laws, right? As long as they have their heads screwed on straight, they know what they're doing, or the path that they should be going on, etc. They're going in that direction. There are multiple ways to deal with things, even though it's hard. I'm not going to say it's not hard, but they have ways to deal with things. It's not going to overcome everything, but I think perspective is huge. Now, if you don't have a Torah perspective, how do you deal with all these things? Why do you think most people are on Prozac today? For that reason. They're not to deal with anything. They're just taking this so they can get by every day. That's even people who have money and don't have others. But everyone has what to deal with. Everybody has what to deal with. But if you don't have Torah mitzvahs in general, and you hear things, you see things around you that are bad, that are hard to comprehend. They're hard to comprehend. It's going to drive people crazy. Well, what's the reality? The reality is they don't think about it. right? That is the reality, right? Someone ever asked, we're supposed to say the evil inclination, go away or ignore it. Well, it's not going away. Yeah, it's always going to be there. And ignoring it, you can't do either. Why? Because the evil inclination comes, you can't just say, well, okay, I'm not dealing with this. Yeah. It doesn't mean the evil inclination went away, right? Person's got to figure out, okay, you can, if it's something where you don't really have to react or do anything, okay, right? And you have a way to deal with it, not in a negative way, okay, right? So you just ignore it, right? You can just ignore it. Some things, let's say, are in your face, you can't ignore, right? You can't, I mean, in theory, you could, right? In theory, let's say it's family members drive you up a wall, right? Now, you can't not deal with them. I mean, you have to deal with them in some ways, right? I would say, uh, um, I would say that, you have to deal with it. You have to deal with it, but, at the end of the day, what happens or what potentially can happen? What can potentially happen is you either decide, I'm going to have a connection with this person, and then you have to know how to deal with them. You have to know what's going to come with the package, which most of us know, right? We should know if we're dealing with family members, probably know. And I would say some relationships, again, without getting into this, because I've spoken about it a lot, some relationships will be toxic and it won't be worth it. Because all you're going to do is get hammered, right? You know it's going to be negative. Potentially it's toxic. I mean, or it is toxic. Very good. So if you know all that, you know that you don't need to bang your head against the wall until it bleeds to know it's bad. Now, the question is, in such a case, what do? You still have that relationship or not? Right? And it doesn't matter, parent, sibling, whatever it is. Yeah. What's the bottom line? Is this good for me or not good for me? Is it something I should delve into or not? Now, I can't answer that question. Right? Yeah, I'm just talking in generalities. It's going to depend. It's going to depend on what the person's able to take and what they want out of the relationship. If it's, let's say, a one-sided relationship, so they know if they don't speak to this person, then they won't really talk so much. And even if they do, conversations that come up are not good. Yeah, they're not good. So a person has to evaluate. Again, it's not my job here to evaluate in general, but a person has to evaluate: is this worth it to me or not? Is it worth it? They have such a connection. Now, some people will say yes, regardless of what the repercussions are. They'll say yes, still worth it. Okay. If it brings a person down, makes them depressed, other things, you got to evaluate or reevaluate. Now, even if a person understands that and it's hard and everything else that goes with it, and they make that conscious decision no matter what, this is what I'm going to do. Okay. They understand what they're getting into. Good. What will other people say? What will other people say potentially? Other people will say it's not worth it. They'll say it's not worth it. And they'll forego the relationship. Now, I've had people ask this question. They said, would you tell people not to have, connection to family? I said, it depends. It absolutely depends. I want to make a habit of it in general. I don't think it's healthy. But if the relationship is unhealthy, then what's the point? Yeah. You want family members telling you if you don't believe in JC, like you're going to find out forever and they're hammering you left and right? They're going to start hammering your kids. Let's say you have kids or whatever. I don't think so. I don't think people want that. If they want to have a relationship, they can say, listen, there are plenty of things we can talk about. This isn't one of them. Right? And you call it out. Right? And you make it very clear. You want to have a relationship, this is what we can talk about. Yeah, or let's say better, this is what we can't talk about. We're not going to talk about. If they want to abide, you say, if you want to abide by it, great. If you don't want to abide by it, there's a problem. there is a problem, right? So imagine, someone goes stay by, let's say stay by their parents. They have little kids. They have, they have TVs there. They say, listen, you want to watch TV? Watch in your room, whatever. Don't want this TV on for our kids. Now, that's kind of, a hard thing. Why? Because, hey, but you're coming into my house. You're right. We're not telling you not to watch. You want to watch? Okay. Yeah. For the sake of us educating our kids, we can't have it. We do not want it. So in this room, don't put it on. Now, can that be offensive? It can be offensive. And a parent can say, you're coming into my house. You're right. Stay in a hotel. Well, we cost efficient, but you can stay in a hotel. You want to stay in a hotel? Stay in a hotel. But we have an absolute obligation to guard our kids, right? Person could say that. Now, a parent most likely would not want their kids to stay in a hotel. Probably. So they'll make the accommodation. But again, there are other things that come with it. They may resent it. Okay. They may resent it. They say, okay, we'll make a compromise. We'll come, but certain conditions. If they adhere to the conditions, good. If they don't adhere to the conditions, then, let's stay somewhere else. They say, but you're forcing your beliefs on them. Okay. But it's also their beliefs. They just don't know about it. Or they don't want it. Or, whatever. But again, it's not the end all things. Right? You can make a compromise. You can say, you want to watch that stupid thing, watch in your room. Just don't want, we're not going to allow them to watch. That might sting. I mean, you're going to be diplomatic, obviously, right? In such a case. Yeah? Yeah, we want to have this relationship. We're willing to come, but there's certain things we need. Okay. They're willing to be accommodated. Good. They're not willing to be accommodated. Because this is what we need. Now, based on that and other things, will there be tension? Sure. Will there be a lot of tension? Sure. Things can be said, people feel bad, whatever. A lot of things. So, what are these kids showing? That the relationship's important. So they're willing to compromise. So it has to go both ways. The other side's not willing to compromise, and because I'm making fun and say this, say that. Okay, so go somewhere else. We don't have to come. Yeah. But there's certain things, let's say, a person will say, it has to be in my turn. People don't like to hear that. They'll call that, what they say in Israel, kfiyat datit, religious coercion. Not time you go pray and do all these other things. Right? Person has to have kosher food, kosher entertainment, other things. Okay. Can that bring about tension? Yes. Is it worth it? Now, these people think it's worth it. Kids have a connection, to the grandparents, even if they're not religious. Okay. It's important, though. So if it's important, you make the efforts as much as possible. And what do you do if you can't? What if you do if the effort doesn't work or it doesn't help? Or there's no way around certain problems? There's nothing to do. It's explain, it's something personal, whatever. These are things we can't do. That's it. Now, the relationship will go wherever it goes. Again, on both sides, if it's important enough, both sides will compromise. But the religious person in this case can only make certain compromise. As Kaufman always says, the Torah's not a pretzel. The Torah does not give me the ability to do what I want when I want. The Torah doesn't give me that opportunity. If there are ways I can do it. Right? If there are possible ways, good. And sometimes, even if there are possible ways, the person will still don't want to do it. Okay. But how far, that's the question. How far is the person willing to go for family peace? Now, again, the Torah's not a pretzel. I can't just do whatever I want. But if it's within, if it's within certain boundaries, okay. Maybe you can rely on things, maybe you shouldn't, whatever. Brothers have their own, their own dastor, their own rabbi to ask questions. Yeah, should I do this? Shouldn't do this, whatever. Yeah. But a person has to know, is this relationship worth it? Whatever the relationship is. If they decide it's not worth it, then they'll do what they do. If something's bad, I don't have to be a part of it. Right? You really don't have to be a part of it. There are, I just heard a story earlier, some kids that ditch the parents. Or diss them, I should say. They have no connection. They haven't had connection for years. And it goes both ways. There are parents that don't have a connection with their kids. They disown their kids. Kids disown their parents for different things. Yeah? I mean, some stories like you can't even, fact is always greater than fiction. Right? As we always say. Some things you hear, you scratch your head and say, well, you can't even make this up. I mean, like some of these situations are just absolutely crazy. They're absolutely crazy and messed up. Okay. Yeah, but at the end of the day, is it worth it? It's also part of the evil inclination. Yeah. Where does the evil inclination work its best? Works its best in these situations. And people who really know how to pull your, how to trigger you. Right? And these are the people closest to us. Right? Most likely either close friends or family. They know how to get under our skin. They know what gets under our skin. So, a person understands that. Again, it's a two-way street. But these relationships are the hardest. Family relationships are the hardest. Right? In general. Now, that being said, I would always say that, if I'm feeling at the top of my game, I got people I can, they call on the phone, no problem. They'll put me right in my place. Right in my place. Yeah. So again, does a person need this? Is it important to them? If it's important to them, they'll ignore all these other things. 100% they'll ignore it. What's the reason they'll ignore it? Because it's important to them. Right? So saying that the evil inclination should go, the evil inclination is not going anywhere. The question is how I deal with it. The evil inclination is still there. Now, the only question is, it's going to be more intense, less intense. And when does it become more or less intense? When you're under more stress. What day of the week is the greatest level of stress for a Jew? Yeah. Yeah, for a religious person. When's the greatest day of aggravation? Shabbos. Right before Shabbos, on Friday. Preparation for Shabbos. Doesn't matter if Shabbos comes in early. It doesn't matter if Shabbos comes in late. When it comes on, it comes to Friday, a person doesn't work, let's say. They don't work on Friday. They still got plenty of things to do. Yeah, you got to cook, you got to clean, you got to run errands, a lot of things. A lot of things the person has to do. The evil inclination knows that. The evil inclination cooks things, especially on Friday. Why? For the sake of holiness here. Not that the evil inclination is doing it for that, but the evil inclination knows, Friday everything's preparation for Shabbos. For religious people. So on that day, many things happen, many things go wrong. Many things go wrong. It's also part of the test. I'm not saying you can't have tests on Shabbos. You can also have tests on Shabbos. Yeah, not like on every day, not like on Friday, right? Because you're preparing for the holy day. So when you prepare for a Jew, if you're preparing, or a JIT or a Jew in training, you're preparing for Shabbos. Yeah, it's the greatest amount of conflict can happen. I'm not saying you don't have days where nothing bad happens. Yeah, we have no difficulty. You can have Fridays, you have no difficulty. Or very little difficulty. Okay. You can have days that are very challenging. For sure, very challenging. Right? And then what can a person say? Person can say, every week I have this problem. Or I have different problems. It can aggravate a person to the extent where they're like, why am I doing this? Week in and week out, I have to go to this place, that place, the other place, whatever. Money might be tight, who knows what. And you're doing all these things. And you forget what the purpose is. So evil inclination can come along and beat you down on a Friday. In a major way. Major way. Evil inclination doesn't want you to finish preparation. Evil inclination wants you to get aggravated. Right? It's an intense time. Especially when Shabbos gets earlier. When Shabbos gets earlier, you got to be quicker. You got to get things done before. Maybe you prepare a few days before. You don't leave everything till Friday, but still, it comes in. When Shabbos comes in relatively early, early-ish. You got to be ready earlier. You got to be prepared earlier. So and other things can come up as well. Anything in between. So they're intense days. But obviously, then Shabbos comes in, everything's set, everything's ready. Good. But again, how could the evil inclination work? The evil inclination can work and say, look, I got all this hardship. I got all this difficulty, especially, these days. Preparation for Passover. People prepare months ahead of time. Cleaning this out, cleaning that out. I'm not talking about spring cleaning. I'm talking about, any place where a person had chametz, had any leaven product. Yeah, that's what we're talking about. So you got to clean your car. If you have a car, you have an office space, you got to clean that. I mean, whatever, a lot of places, especially in your house or apartment, wherever you live. It's very intense. Then at some point you got to turn over, right? You're gonna, take out all your chametz, all your leaven products. You're gonna bring in all your stuff for Passover and your pots and pans and this and that. Your house is upside down, totally upside down. Sometimes you're not, fully prepared for all the Passover stuff. You're not, totally prepared to take all the chametz out, whatever. So it's like for a few days. For a few days, totally upside down. Totally, you got boxes here, boxes there, there's that. Totally upside down. Yeah, but that's part of it. Not to mention the huge expense as well. That's a whole other issue. Right? But here we're talking about preparation. So here, it's the month of salvation. It's a huge, huge time for prayer during the whole month, especially on the week of Passover. Yeah, but if a person gets caught up in the everyday and gets caught up on other things around them, and they have to do this on top of it, you forget what you're doing. A person, a person, let's say 10 minutes before sundown, and they're busy ripping toilet paper. They're like, why am I doing this? Like, what's the whole purpose? Does God really care? Make the person think. Does God really care? If I have tissues or I have to rip toilet paper or this, like, why does God care about this? Now, why would that question come up? Because you're under pressure. You're under the gun. Right? It's only so many hours a day. It's only so much time you give to this or whatever. Okay. Without staying up half the night and other things. Sometimes you might have to. Depends. Depends what a person's going through. But it's tremendously stress-filled time. Not only cleaning for Passover, but cooking. Right? And once you clean, you got to cook. You got to prepare for the Seder, then you got 2 days of meals. As well. So you got to turn over at least a few days before. At least. Give you time to cook and whatever. It's intense. It's supposed to be intense. Yeah. Now, the evil inclination can come and be extremely strong at this point. Extremely strong. Give you all kinds. Imagine if, God forbid, someone was sick in the family during this time. Imagine if there were other issues, during this time. Besides all the other things you have to do. The person will say, wow, You have so many obligations. Comes to Shabbos, comes to festivals. Okay, you only have certain festivals during the year. Very good. That times to be more intense. Okay. But the whole year's not necessarily like that. But again, preparation for Shabbos. And Shabbos comes in early, even if it comes in late, doesn't matter. It's a grind. Okay, I have to do this, I have to do that, I have to prepare. Very good. But can that be depressing? Can it be aggravating? Especially if a person doesn't realize why they're doing what they're doing. Yeah. They think it's just a bunch of rules, right? That's what other people around them will say. Come on, it's all these antiquated rules. Come on, you really think? Like an air, people I know. I grew up saying, come on, you really think? You really think God's going to care whether you tear toilet paper or not? You really think he cares if you do this or do that? Now, what can that do? That can make you aggravated, for sure. What can that do, though? That can put ideas in your head. You can think, wow, maybe it's an interesting idea. What? Why does God care if I rip toilet paper or not? Why does he care if that I'm not allowed to eat anything roasted on Passover? Right, corresponding Paschal offering. Why should he care? Why should you have all these rules by the rabbis? Right, I hear that all the time. I'm only going to keep what the Torah says. Good luck. Leviticus chapter 23, I'll get there one day. I don't know when. God says you're going to live in a sukkah 7 days. Very good. Tell me what a sukkah is. How many walls? Does it have a roof? What, you got to take a nice smelling fruit on sukkahs. Okay. Don't tell me what it is. Someone's going to say it's a quince. Someone's going to say it's a pomegranate. Someone's going to say it's a pineapple, watermelon. I don't know. No one's going to think it's lemon on steroids, right? One of these bumpy lemons. No one's going to think that. We have answers. Not like we don't have answers. Some people may not like the answers. Oh, what I have to listen to rabbis, this and that. Because God gave the right to interpret the Torah. And he goes to the Kohen and Levite in every generation, as the Torah says. Well, in the book of Deuteronomy. And who are the Kohanim in every generation? The rabbis, very good. Okay. Yeah, but they made too many laws. They made it too hard. Okay. And this is all we have. This is all we have. Yeah. We have no other way of interpreting the Torah. You go according to Karaites. Yeah. Karaites believe in, they don't believe in what the rabbis say. They have their own interpretation, but their goal is to hold exactly what the Torah says. Hold exactly what the Torah says. Very good. How many Karaites are there in the world? Don't tell me 50,000. Okay. When's the last time you heard Karaites doing anything in the world? Anything. So to me, even if there are 50,000, it's like they don't exist. It's like they totally don't exist. But they have their own interpretation. Very good. So again, doesn't this put ideas in our minds? Doesn't this get us to think? And people, why would people say this? Because they want to show, if they're, let's say they're a secular Jew. You think, come on, no one expects everyone to be religious. So really? Up until 250 years ago, everyone was Orthodox. More or less. When God gave the Torah to the Jewish people, they single people out. He said, well, if you're a Reformed Jew, you got no mitzvahs. If you're a conservative Jew, you got some mitzvahs. If you're Orthodox, you got all the mitzvahs. And everyone stood in different lines. I don't know. It doesn't say that. You're right. If we're going to be a Karaite, we're going to look at it literally. It doesn't say that at all. Where does the Torah say I can pick and choose? Doesn't. The Torah doesn't say that. The Torah says you got to do this, don't do that, whatever. But again, what's the problem? The problem is a person going to say that, and whatever it may be, they'll get a person to think. It's going to put bad ideas in a person's head. Right? So they're going to go to ChatGPT, or they go to Rabbi Dr. Google, or whatever. They'll say, well, what's the answer? It's a good question. I'm not saying it's not a valid question. It's a valid question. Very good. What do you do? Why should I be doing this? Why should I be doing these antiquated laws? And look at the people that pick and choose and do whatever they want. It's a disaster. 60, 70% into marriage. Yeah. And you got 13.5 million Jews don't know anything about Torah and mitzvahs. That's what you have. Yeah. I'm not saying there aren't answers. There are plenty of answers, but what does it do? What do these things do? comes on the evil inclination through other people. Oh, we're going to hammer this person. Yeah, we're going to show them, it's all farce. It doesn't really mean anything. And they're wasting their lives. Imagine this person wasting their life for so long. Keeping all these antiquated laws. Well, it's their choice. 100% it's their choice. But what are they doing? They want to feel good about themselves. So by feeling good about themselves, they're going to put you down. And they're going to say, oh, it doesn't matter, and then they'll throw out, wow, why did God kill 6 million people? Why are there so many things against the Jews in the world? Yeah, that's what you're worried about. You can't sleep at night because of that? Or you just, throw that out as a block. It's a block. They never thought about it before. Or maybe even if they have. How have they really delved into it? Looked at the sources. Maybe even read the book of Job. Right? Guaranteed they didn't read the book of Job. Right? Because when they go to the last 2 chapters of the book of Job, God chastises Job. Because he complains. So God chastises. Like, were you there when I saved these animals and this and that and I can play with the Leviathan? No. Were you there when I can do this and do that? No. So he says, shut your big mouth. You don't have anything to say. I run the world. Do you think you're in my head? You know how I run the world? You know how it works? Right? If I let the Leviathan loose, right, you die from his breath. He'd rip you to shreds. And I play with him. I've jumped through hoops. Do all these things. You're not in control. You little toad, twit, whatever you want to call him. It's like, who are you to say anything? So people throw these things out. It's a test. Sure, it's a test. Because then it makes us overthink. Makes us double think. Say, no, I just believe. No, that's for the Christians. That someone once told me that. Someone had said something to them. They had a child, tragic, died in a car accident at the age of 16. And someone tells them, well, at least your son's in a better place. I thought that was a very Christian thing to say. Right? That's what the person said. And so where do you think they got it from? There's a good place, there's a bad place. But even the bad place, what we call hell or Gehenna, is an atonement process for a person to get into Gan Eden. Yeah. But people know nothing. But they throw things out. They throw these ideas out. It makes people think. And we should be thinking. Right? I would always say, God said it, we do it, and that's it. Okay. We have to try to the best of our ability to understand, right? To understand what the Torah wants. To understand what our obligations are. Yeah? It's not easy. In any case, it's not easy. Right? But at the end of the day, what does God want? He wants you to put in the effort. That's what he wants. He wants you to put in the effort. Is the effort going to be easy? No. Right? We say, Lefit Sar Agra, right? According to the amount of pain is going to be the amount of reward a person's going to get, right? For doing it. For doing whatever mitzvah, whatever we're doing. Yeah, that's what it's going to be. But it's going to take effort. If people are going to say things, and people are going to try and convince us. Thank God people gave up on me a long time ago. They thought, oh, it's a phase, it's this and that. They see, 35 years later, well, not so much a phase. I indoctrinated other people. My spouse, my kids, I got my grandkids. Okay. Yeah. So those different things. It's not like they have arguments, but people can say things, and it makes us think. Why does it make us think? Because there are times we're more vulnerable. Yeah, we can be a lot more vulnerable. So then, let's say a person have difficulty with their spouse, with their kids, or whatever, or with everybody. Livelihood they're having problem with, health they're having problem with, and someone makes a comment and says, you know what? You have so many kids. You did this to yourself. You did it to yourself. So I read a story over Shabbos, a couple stories where Rabbi's brother-in-law, blessed memory, Vari Schechter, Vari Schechter was he's a big magi. He spoke all over the world. Very inspirational speaker among Israelis, and he did a lot of seminars helping Israelis come back to Judaism. He told a few stories about the importance. One of the verses says in this week's parsha It talks about the certain mitzvahs that give you long life. Yeah, it'll give you long life on this earth. One of them is keeping Shabbos. So I told two stories about people that work for, one worked for a what do you call it? Worked for the electric company 25 years. And
Hey, what up, y'all?
he
How we
said,
doing?
all right, he says that um, the idea is that what? That, the idea is that he worked 25 years, right? 25 years. And basically, for 25 years says I work on Shabbos, right? I work on Shabbos. So he says, how's it going to be? How's it possible going to be that 25 years I work on Shabbos? How can I stop? How's God going to give me money? Right? So he told him, listen, said, I can't promise you anything. I do know one thing. The one thing I know is that person keeps Torah mitzvahs, you never lose. If you keep
بيت استرد المظالم حتى الأراذيل ساموا رسول أهل العزائم فالقول قول الصوارم بيت استرد
yeah, if you keep Torah mitzvahs, 1 second here.
Don't clip.
If you keep Torah mitzvahs, then you'll never lose, right? If you keep Torah mitzvahs, you don't lose. Now, that being the case, right? That being the case, he said, "What am I supposed to do?" So he said, "I can't promise you. What I can tell you," he says, "What I can tell you is that if you keep Shabbos, you won't lose." So, a few years later, or a year later, I told him also, by the way, you're going to be able. He said, if you work for 25 years, so you'll get what do you call it? You'll get pitzuim. Pitzuim are whatever. You get paid, right? You'll get paid from them. Whatever. Whatever it's called. I forget what it's called. Whatever, you get compensation. They'll give you compensation. Right? A compensation package. Very good. They'll give you a compensation package. Now that's significant money. That is significant money. So he says you could do that. And then figure out what you're going to do after that, or whatever. Right? So it didn't say what he did. 100% didn't say what he did. But he said he came back to him like a year later, looking like an Orthodox Jew, and said, yeah, I took your advice. I don't work on Shabbos, and God rewarded me in other ways. Right? And I've lived in other ways. Same thing happened. Someone was a police officer, I think, for 10 years. Similar thing. He told him 100%. I can't guarantee you, but if you keep Shabbos, you won't lose. Right? The person also came back to him, years later, and said, I took your advice and I was able to do it. So it's a test. Nobody's saying it's not a test. Right? Nobody's saying it's not a test. Yeah. So you're going to say, but how am I going to keep up with everybody else? How in the world am I going to keep up with everybody else? Right? Bottom line, what's going to happen? I'll lose. I'll lose by keeping Shabbos. So he said, nobody loses by keeping Shabbos. Nobody. Since God can help you other ways. Right? He can take care of you in 5 days. Have enough livelihood. Yeah. Even if you take off this amount of time, whatever. Right? So you don't lose. But is it a test? Oh, yeah. It's a big test. Very, very big test. Somebody asks, will the inclination hang out inside synagogue? Sure. Also. Not just out, just not outside the world, right? Can be in synagogues as well. How does that work? People talk when they should be praying. Yeah, people talk when the Torah is being read. People, socialize, speak about things not appropriate for a synagogue, or maybe anywhere. Sure. Yeah, yeah. Let's say a person in the synagogue speaking about politics. Politics don't belong in the synagogue. It's the core. It's a holy place. You're gonna say, but I heard people. Okay, I don't care what people heard or whatever. Is it a good thing or not? Not a good thing. Person's making a point, whatever, but person just smoothing about like what's going on in politics and this and that, forget it. Right? Doesn't belong there. There's the core. Or a person thinks, let's say, they're learning in a synagogue, study hall, whatever, and a mitzvah comes up, they say, no one else can do it except for me. Now, if that's true, no one else can do it, you have an obligation to stop learning. Right? But a person's going to say, well, this chesed, this act of loving kindness, whatever, this mitzvah's come my way, I have to do it. No, who said you had to do it? Obviously it's because not for saving a life, different issue. They're not talking about that. So the Vilna Gaon, bless the memory, said the evil inclination come that way. Even in study hall, even in synagogue, not just outside. Right? Equal opportunity, so to speak. Evil inclination can work that way. Can work outside as well. Right? It doesn't distinguish here. Evil inclination come in many ways. Right? From within and from without. But that being said, with all these things, it could be overkill. Totally overkill. And the reason is because, a person go to synagogue, and let's say there are people there, maybe not so religious, let's say, and they're throwing out ideas that are basically heresy. That 100% are heresy. So you gotta be careful, Chabad does a great job. I'm not going to say, anything about them, except really the Messianics that believe the Rebbe is the Messiah. That's a different issue. But in general, you can have all kinds of people in a Chabad house. Yeah, meaning that you got people that really aren't so religious. So that can have an effect on person. As well. There could be, again, even in a regular Orthodox synagogue, there could be different levels of religiosity. Definitely could be different levels of religiosity. Yeah. At the same time, person has to be careful. All the more so, you got to be careful. You got rabbis saying things they shouldn't say things. Yeah. They may be heretics at the same time. You got to be careful. I just heard somebody speak, and I wouldn't trust what this person says for the life of me. But the whole question, I'm not going to deal with it here. About Charlie Kirk being killed, right? That happened a few weeks ago, or a while ago. And does he have a place in Gan Eden? Is he gonna go to paradise or not? Hey, look how pro-Israel he was. Okay. Yeah, very true. Very true. Stuck up for Israel, no question, but he's a Christian. He's evangelical. Yeah. So if he believes JC's God, he's out. Right? Death penalty. Yeah. So without getting into all that, this whatever. This rabbi said, well, there are two things here. Right? There are two issues here. One issue is getting into paradise in general. Right? Whether if he's idolater or not. Which, why should he get the paradise? It's got death penalty. Okay. Yeah. And the second question of a karzatuf, of gratitude. Right? Someone, is going to go that far to, stand up for the Jewish people thick and thin, regardless whether he's an evangelical or not, that's a different issue. Right? That's a different issue. So there's an opinion that says somebody like that, you say, what about, the question, what about, all these people who were Christians and saved people during the Holocaust? Okay, they'll get some reward, I'm sure. Sure they'll get some reward. The fact is they're a Christian. Okay. Whatever, it's a complicated issue. It's a complicated issue. But I want to point out one thing. Right? This person quoted a Meiri. Well, Meiri, one of the great commentators, hundreds of years ago, lived in Italy. Yeah. They wrote a whole commentary on the Talmud. Right? People study his works, etc. But the one knock against him is that he wasn't in contact with the rabbis that generation. He was like isolated in Italy. Other people in other places. He didn't come in contact with great rabbis that generation. So the knock is, let's say, if the Meiri stands out by himself, he disagrees, let's say, with the majority. Normally go according to the majority anyway, yeah? Right? But the problem is, we take what he says into account up to a point. Up to a point. But you're never going to quote him and say, well, others might disagree, but, we have this opinion. The Meiri does not have the same stature as the Ramban. Does not have the same stature as Rabbeinu Asher, the Rosh, right? Or Rashi, or the Ritva, or the Rashba, or, any of these great early commentators. Even though he's around the same time, let's say. Right? So now, again, this is kind of a subtlety that probably a lot of people wouldn't know, and that is, okay, you're not going to rely on him by himself. You'll never rely on him by himself. That's a general rule. Right? Anyone in learning knows this. And there are only, a handful of times you go according to, let's say, one person against the majority. There are commentaries saying, like in this case, you can rely on this opinion, even though it goes against, the majority. Because normally, Exodus chapter 23, verse 2 says you go according to the majority. For good, not for bad. Okay. There are cases, limited cases, where you can go according to one against everybody else. Limited cases. Yeah. Very few cases. Now, this person says, well, we have this opinion of the Meiri, blah, blah, blah. Now, again, I wouldn't trust what this person says anyway, in general, but when you make a statement like that, so that's a red flag. That is a red flag. And the person who was interviewing him said this. Said exactly this. Yeah? Said exactly this. He says you can't rely on that against everyone else. It's like, no, you have to understand whatever. He had whatever reason to say. Now you're saying, well, that's not the worst thing a person ever said. Good. I would agree it's not the worst thing a person ever said. But see, most people don't pick up on that. So as we always say, you gotta be careful who you listen to. 100%, you gotta be careful who you listen to. So someone, it'd be a similar thing. If someone says, well, I have a medrash, and the medrash says like this, we all like the medrash. Now, medrash is a Talmudic source that didn't make it into the Gemara for whatever reason. Right? It didn't make it in. It's not a valid source for halakha. Yeah? In other words, sometimes Tosfos, other commentators will bring up a medrash. Yeah? Maybe backing something up or giving an explanation, whatever. But in general, quoting a medrash to say this is what the halachic ramification is, never happened. Doesn't have that type of source, doesn't have that type of quality. Or that strength, let's say better. Doesn't have that type of strength. Now, a person's been learning for many years, or even not for so many years, doesn't matter. This is a concept they probably know. Right? If you've been learning for many years, you know that's clear. You know that is clear. Yeah? You know that's clear. Now, that being said, if somebody tells you, well, we poskin according to Jewish law, according to this medrash, you know they don't know what they're talking about. Right? It's also a red flag. It's also a major red flag. But that's common knowledge. Person sitting on the bench in yeshiva for many years, that's aleph base. They know that. Yeah? Like that goes without saying. So even though that goes without saying, again, you have to know who's saying it. You have to know if they really know what they're talking about or not. Yeah, because if they don't know what they're talking, if they're going to say that, that's a major red flag. That is a major, that's a major red flag. So I'm just pointing out, sometimes people will say things, even if they're rabbis, and you gotta be careful. You gotta be careful who says what. Somebody mentions, he also wrote a book, Charlie Kirk wrote a book, about keeping Shabbos. Okay. He's not allowed to keep Shabbos. Okay. Yeah. Book hasn't come out yet, by the way, but even so, you know, he told, somebody Jewish, his goal is that they should believe in JC. Like, okay, right? Doesn't mean he wasn't pro-Israel. Very good. You always have to question somebody, is pro-Israel, especially evangelicals, right? Because what's their end goal? That JC should come back, and all the Jews have to be in Israel. Very good. Yeah. Was he a missionary? I don't know if he's a missionary, per se. Right? But, he definitely, if he believed, let's just, I don't really harp on him, but let's just say he believed that JC was God. Yeah, that's idolatry. That is idolatry. According to most rabbinic authorities, that's idolatry. It's for sure idolatry. Yeah. So yeah, keeping Shabbos is a problem. That's it's definitely a problem. So there are two issues here. One, the fact he's a Christian. That's one issue. But there's another issue. The other issue is about Hakaras Hatov, about having gratitude. Now, praising non-Jews is a big problem, especially athletes, right? It's a whole issue. It's a whole big issue, right? In general, it should be a Torah prohibition. Really should be a Torah prohibition, right? So the question is, you praising him, you're showing gratitude. Yeah. So with him, the fact that, he's very pro-Israel, and a lot of his views coincide with Torah. Yeah, he does have good values. He had some good values. Yeah, that it was promoting, no question. I mean, I give him credit for what he did. Deal with these woke people and university students or whatever, for sure. That doesn't negate the fact. That does not negate the fact he's an evangelical. He's a Christian. Yeah, now, what level is Christian? Good question. Yeah. Yeah, but again, if he believed JC was God, that's the problem. Now, you can have gratitude for someone defending the Jewish people, but also at the same time, it doesn't change the status. Doesn't, will he get reward for some of the things he did? Sure. He should get some reward. I would assume. Should get something, right? That doesn't mean he's going to have a portion of the world to come. Right? Maybe get some level of reward, but in fact, the Christian is a problem. I mean, you don't get out of that problem. No matter how much gratitude, there are two issues. Again, no matter how much gratitude you have for defending the Jewish people and what he did, whatever, okay. That's one thing. Yeah, but it doesn't change the fact of who he was. Does not change the fact of who he was. Now, could be he was liable for death penalty. He got it. He got death penalty. Someone killed him. That's death penalty. Yeah, that could have atoned. Could have. So maybe he has a portion somewhere. Maybe. Maybe. But who says if they're killed or whatever that they should have a portion? Right? Like, is that enough atonement in order to get him into the next world? He's liable for death penalty, that's for sure. So you say, okay, he gets atonement, he goes scot-free. I don't know. I don't think so. I never don't think so. Someone asked, would it be improper to post anything about him on Facebook? Again, I have an issue. And not only that, you have religious magazines, saying good stuff about him, and rabbis around the world saying good things about him. So how can they? That's the whole question. That is the whole question. Same thing with Mike Huckabee, ambassador to Israel, very good. Whatever, he's a Christian, very pro-Israel, right? No question. But again, it's a catch-22. He's a Christian. Very nice. Very nice. He's also liable with that penalty. If he believes JC is the Messiah. Now, the different levels of Christianity, different groups that don't believe he's the Messiah. Okay. That I don't have a problem with if they don't believe he's God. If they don't believe, let's say better, if they don't believe he's God. Okay. So they're not liable for death penalty. For that. Unless you tell me they believe in different religion, the Rambam learns anyone who believes a different religion is out. Yeah. They're out. For the death penalty or not, different issue. But they're out in general. So what he did, if you heard him speak, a lot of things he answered are in line with Torah. Okay. They are in line with Torah, no question. So you think, so, you know, that doesn't negate the fact of who he was. Does not negate that fact. So, and the question is, should you put stuff up, you put something on Facebook up, so I would say like this, politics, other things, people put up all kinds of things, right? Most things are bad. I'd say most things are probably not so good, if not forbidden. Yeah. So, what he promoted in general, the values, a lot of them in line with Torah. I'm not even, it was more to the right in politics. Very good. Yeah. But at the same time, there are other issues with him. The fact that he was a Christian evangelical doesn't change, whether he had good values or not, that doesn't change anything. Right? It makes it worse. It definitely makes it worse. Yeah. What should a person put up on their Facebook page? I just say put up Torah. Like, why are you putting all this other stuff for? If he's got good values. Yeah. If he's got good values. There aren't enough, Torah greats out there to put their stuff up there instead of putting, non-Jews. That's the knock on some, religious magazines that, they'll put like, Mike Huckabee on the front cover for whatever. Why are you putting him on the front cover for? There are people who had issue with that. Why put him on the front cover? For what? Okay, he's pro-Israel. He's done a lot of good things. That's true. He can have a Karas Tov. Trump as well. Say whatever you want about him. Greatest president Israel's ever had, no question. Yeah. So yeah, I understand maybe a little bit more. Because of different initiatives he's doing or whatever. Maybe you give him front page coverage. Yeah, for different things. People could argue that also. What about putting this stuff up on Facebook? So that's more controversial. Because his character's totally flawed, right? In many ways. Regardless if he agrees with his policies or not. So again, a person wants to put these political things up there, they can put them up there. There's no, I don't think it's a place for that. If you're gonna put up stuff, put up Torah, right? That's it. Right? I have people like wanting me to put up stuff all the time. I don't. I put up Torah, that's it. Either my stuff or a few other people's things. That's it. You want to put it up, you can put it up, but he did have good values. I'm not gonna say no. He had good values. Yeah. And a lot of values are in line with Torah, but he's flawed in other ways. Right? He's flawed because he's a Christian. That's why he's flawed. And evangelical. That doesn't change anything. I did hear one thing, there's a a Jewish student in one of these universities, and basically they confronted him, about, so you think, I'm not going to find out forever if I don't believe in JC. They confronted him, and like, your job is to make sure that we come to JC, whatever. And he admitted it. He totally admitted it. He said, yeah, that's a problem. That is a problem. Doesn't mean he doesn't have other good values, other places. Okay. But that by itself, liable for death penalty. Yeah. Doesn't mean you have good things to say. Plenty of good things to say. Yeah, like I said, I give him credit for what he did. Tremendous credit. Dealing with people with stupid issues. He never put them down, never said anything bad against them. No one's gonna quote him on that. He never did. He didn't watch all these videos, no matter what someone said. He didn't curse them out or whatever. He answered them. He totally answered them. It was pretty amazing. Most people lose their cool with some of the idiocy that's out there. Because he was a mensch and he was concerned, he was very nice to people, and it's okay. And how much he defended Israel, also good. Yeah, but kind of two-faced. Defending Israel, thinking JC's coming back. That's kind of a problem, right? So how can you put someone like that on a pedestal? Yeah. I can put Huckabee on a pedestal, put him on a cover of magazine. So again, they have their own rabbinical board. Which obviously, because of, I guess it's the bottom line, because of the goodness of what they do, right? So you have to have a karas tov, you have to have gratitude. The fact that they defend us and they help us, whatever. Okay. So, that's the permissibility, right? Put them on a higher pedestal and put them out there, whatever. But again, is he liable for death penalty if he believes JC is God? Yes. Still liable for death penalty. Yeah. So, so the question would be, even if you hold this gratitude, how can you put it on the front page of the magazine? So I'll say because of gratitude. Okay. Yeah, not so simple. Right? Not so simple, but there are many people who've complained and said, like, why is this person on the front page? Why should you get many ink at all? Because of gratitude, that's why you should. Okay, but you want to put it on the front page? Like, okay. Someone asked, best for me is the JIT to stay out of it, especially being a woman in modesty. Again, for the most part, I would say 100% social media waste of time. Absolute waste of time. Yeah. I don't think, I don't think there's any, I don't think there's any question. I don't think there's, I don't think there's any, I don't think there's any, I don't think there's any, I don't think there's any issue, about that. So at the end of the day, at the end of the day, it's a waste of time, right? Total waste of time. So regardless, modesty issues or not, in general, it's a waste of time. Yeah. So at the end of the day, unless you have something specific there, you want to contact someone, whatever, it's one thing. See what people put up there, whatever. A lot of it negative, probably a lot of it lashon hara, and other things. Like what, it's a waste of time. A waste of time in general. I'm not even saying like, for a woman doesn't have one to learn Torah, whatever. Fine, but a lot of things out there are negative. Usually they're negative. There are some positive things. I'm not gonna say none, right? But at the end of the day, even when does have an obligation to learn Torah, it's still a waste of time. Not to mention the fact there'll be other issues. There'll be modesty issues. There'll be lashon hara issues. All kinds of things. All the more so for men, right? What about a no-I? What about someone who's not going to convert? It's also a waste of time. Yeah, it's not one of the no-I laws, right? They're certainly not obligated to learn. We're certainly like a Jew, so it's still a waste of time. Yeah. Even if they're not going to learn, right? Most of the values there are not good. They're not good, in general, right? So unless someone can prove to me why it's beneficial, or why certain things are beneficial. If it's beneficial, according to Torah, and everything fits in, very good. As if it's beneficial. Yeah, if it's not beneficial. It's interesting. I have this question like, some people like to watch, I don't know, cat videos, animal videos. Okay. Yeah. Besides being a waste of time. They're funny. Very good. What's so bad about that? So it's also part of this topic. But what's so bad about it? Besides being a waste of time. Yeah. Problem is, covered another time, but the main problem is we ourselves are on screens too much. That I don't think is any question. And dialogues people have with others, people don't know how to write anymore. People don't know how to have conversations with people. People don't have attention span anymore. It used to be the attention span was the time of a commercial, which used to be back in the days 6 minutes. To now it's just like they throw images left and right. They throw all these images. Yeah. So that being the case, then the issue is what's the benefit, right? What's the benefit here? Well, what's the benefit? If it has a benefit, good. Yeah, most things I would say, probably don't. But not only that, more person, is on a computer, is on the screen, the worse it is. But I have to be on for a certain amount of time for certain things. Okay. It's also good to just take a break or whatever. Phone, computer, whatever. Even though we're on screens a lot. But it can be overkill. It can be totally overkill. And it's not beneficial. In many ways. We're part of it. I read an article a while ago about, the total effect of what it does. And how much it affects a person. People today don't know how to write, they don't know how to do grammar. Everything is like ChatGPT or other programs that make life so easy. Covers grammar, syntax, all kinds of things. So the more technology, the worse it is for people. Makes people more stupid. Yeah, or stupider, let's say. Makes them stupider. Because they themselves don't know how to do basic things. English, I never enjoyed grammar, syntax, these type of things. And you have things today make it so much easier. ChatGPT makes it very easy. You give it certain things to do and it'll write it up and do it 10 times better than you could write it. Okay. That doesn't help a person. Right? That's not helping them. Right? Essentially what that's doing is it's stunting their growth. That's what it's doing. Right? Essentially. So with the greater technology, people are kind of silly. People don't learn the same. People, many things they don't know. Because they're relying on other things. Now I went to college back in the day. Word processors were starting to come out. And, what are the two most important books you had if you had to write papers and this and that? A dictionary and a thesaurus. How many people use a thesaurus today? How many people even know what a thesaurus is? Yeah? Most people probably never heard of it. Yeah, you say, well, certain words, synonyms, antonyms, this and that. Yeah, you can look up in a book. You get a thesaurus online. Very good. See how to say things. People don't even do that. A lot of people probably. Because it's easy to have someone else write it. You have to do it yourself, like breaking your teeth. You took grammar, this and that in school. Very good. But again, today you write on Word or any other word processing program, fix the syntax straight away. Fix the spelling. But people don't know how to spell today. In general. Every so often I see something, like the spelling bee, this and that. Okay. But in general, it wasn't like what it was before, no question. It's a lot harder before. A lot harder. You actually had to be creative. You had to actually use your mind. Today, mind's just a terrible thing. It's not a terrible thing to waste. It's just a terrible thing. People don't think. They don't want to think. Too hard to think. Rather die than think. Yeah, but it's hard. You got to put in effort. You got to put in a lot of effort. To do it. We're living in the easiest generation in the history of man. Everything's done for us. Making life so easy. Regardless of where ChatGPT goes or not. Take away hundreds of jobs. This okay, whatever. With all the good and all the bad and whatever. But at the end of the day, it weakens a person. I don't think there's any question. I don't think there's any question. So all these things, even though there's a lot of Torah, right? There's plenty of Torah on the internet, yeah? Plenty of Torah. So people say there's a benefit. Okay. Right? But if you look at the majority of things that are out there, the majority of things are bad. It's convenient, very convenient. The bank transfers, buying things, whatever. Comes in handy, there's no question. There's no question. Yeah. But the majority of things you're going to see that are out there are bad. Now, someone already has it and they're already on it and whatever. So isn't it better for them to learn Torah? Yes. 100%. It's easy to get distracted? Yes. You see things you don't want to see? Yes. So, in the bigger scheme of things, is it good or bad? It's bad. Everyone agrees it's bad, but okay, you gotta deal with it. Right? You gotta deal with it. But everyone agrees mostly it's bad. Mostly it's bad. Right? TV, no difference back in the day. Cable first came out. He said, listen, all the stuff out there is not really so bad. Yeah, I can watch, I can watch the History Channel. I can watch Doctor Who. I don't know if he's still alive, probably not. Yeah, I can watch educational things. Okay, so the last week, how many educational things did you watch? None. But I could. But I could watch all these educational things. Very good. I can watch documentaries and this and that. But how many do you? Do you do it on a regular basis? Take the last 10 things you watched. How many were educational? Very easy. Yeah, this is not rocket science. I'm not talking out of my elbow. Most people want to watch things that are interesting. Yeah. Maybe some people like into these things and watch, historical documentaries and okay. Yeah. You're gonna tell me not watching I don't know, not watching Marvel movies, not watching other things. Yeah, sporting events, whatever. Of course. 10 out of 10, they're not watching historical documentaries. They're not watching the History Channel. Maybe once in a blue moon, maybe. Probably not. Probably most people not. I didn't take a survey, but yeah, I definitely think that's the truth. I did once when I was working with students at Hebrew University. That's all things they watched. Everybody interviewed was the same. Yeah, educational things? Never. Never. Right? This is a number of people. Right? The higher number, we get the same result. If I did it with 100 people and 100 people said the same thing, you do it with 1,000, it's going to be the same. You have some individuals here and there, be very, very small percentage. Very, very small percentage. Yeah, but that's what's out there because they want to watch things that are fun. They're distracting. Anyone wants to learn about history? Yeah, some people. You tell me some people. It's a very small percentage. Very small percentage. I'm talking like, more than 25 years ago. Yeah. The vast majority of people, just about everybody, said the same thing. And so what about, but there are, you have a, History Channel, you got other things going on, they're more educational. They said, yeah, I can watch it. So my question was always the same. So how much have you watched? How much of these things have you watched in the last week? Yeah, let's say when you're home, even better. Right? How much of these things did you watch? 0. That was always the answer. 0. But I could. You're right, you could, but you don't. Yeah. So that's just a block. Because the idea is, look at all the educational things. Okay, great. So you just name me a whole bunch of educational things. How many have you watched? Bottom line, in the last year, 0. 0. I didn't find anybody who said I watched 10 things. I watched 1 thing. See anybody who said that? They're regular college kids. Yeah. But they all said the same thing. I have the potential. Okay. You have the potential, but did you do it or not? Did you do it or not? You didn't do it. And you won't do it. In the future, you won't do it. Right? So, it's kind of just like a block, and that's it. Somebody asks, why is it hard to find Hebrew class in secular schools? Why would they teach it? Because it's a limited thing. Only, small amount of people are probably going to want to learn it. It's not a language most people want to learn. Why? You could tell me it's anti-Semitism, right? I don't know if it's directly anti-Semitism. There has to be a need, right? That school has to have a need. If there's a need, they'll do it. But there has to be a need. So why wouldn't most secular schools do it? Again, you can tell me it's probably, could be linked to anti-Semitism. It could be. I don't think so. Right? I don't necessarily think so. And the reason is because you have to have a need. Right? And here you don't have a need. How many people want to learn Hebrew in the middle of nowhere? Nobody. Very few people, if that. If there's a more Jewish population, let's say, Or you're in a population where more people want to learn Hebrew, good. Right? So maybe it'd be worthwhile for that school to have people teach Hebrew. Okay? Because it's a big enough Jewish population. If it's not a big enough Jewish population, they won't teach it. It had nothing to do with anti-Semitism. It's practical. Right? It could be anti-Semitic. I'm not saying not, but it's probably not. Right? Most likely the issue is going to be is there's no need. Right? If there's no need, why would they do it? Someone asked, I noticed after Yom Kippur, everything on the internet was shock value. Is that done on purpose? I don't know specifically, after Yom Kippur, you got to remember, anything that happens for the sake of Jewish people. Yeah. So things that, the evil inclination come in waves, and come in waves for, as a wake-up call. Right? As a wake-up call for us. So is there a coincidence right after Yom Kippur? No. Not a coincidence because, again, when you have holy days, right, tremendously holy days, evil inclination works very hard to offset it. Right? In other words, we have holiness, you have to have impurity. So when you have tremendous days of holiness, you can have tremendous days of impurity and other things go on with that. So I wouldn't say it's necessarily coincidental. Someone says it's like everything's based on Christianity. Yeah, they always combine Jewish and Muslim and Christians. Well, where does Christianity come from? Christians believe it's based on the Old Testament, right? That's why most people don't believe in Christianity or came out of Christianity looking into Torah, because that's the base, right? That is the base. But someone said that they watch anything archaeological. They don't mention Jews or combine it. Yeah, why? Because they don't want to give us credit. Yeah, Muslims talk about Muhammad's flight and this and that from Mecca to Medina. They talk about things like it's like the temple never existed, but the temple was there, 1,000 years at least before Islam, easily. Yeah, so and wherever they built their mosque, what there was nothing there. What they built it on? They know, they know what the truth is. They don't want to give the credibility, even though the Quran says many, many times about the Jews being in Jerusalem and in Israel belonging to the Jewish people. Make that very, very clear. Yeah, they kind of want to step aside, step over that, and make believe that doesn't exist. But that's very clear. So what's the whole point of not mentioning Jewish things and all that? Because they don't want to give it credibility. They don't want to show that we're right and that we were here first. The Ark of the Covenant basically filled with the original Torah scrolls. Yes, somewhere buried under the Temple Mount. It should be intact, I would assume. Still very much intact, but it's built somewhere underneath I shouldn't say built. It's whatever. It's somewhere deep underneath the Temple Mount, right? No matter what they do, it would still be there, right? Definitely still be there. Is honoring your grandparents less important or as important as honoring your parents? Yeah, there's a whole question. There's a whole question if your father or grandfather told you to do something, who do you listen to first? Yeah. So your father has an obligation, he's still alive, has an obligation, right, to honor his father first. Yeah, you have an obligation to honor your father first. So if the grandfather or father, right, you should really, honor your father first. Right, that's the way it come up. Someone ever said the film guy went viral on social media because the guy went to New York for his Red Sox. Yeah, Tuesday night after Yom Kippur and brought a chauffeur with him. Yeah, it's called Mitzvah Baba Vera. Mitzvah Baba Vera. Yeah, in other words, you're doing a transgression at the same time you're quote unquote doing a mitzvah. First of all, there's no mitzvah going to a ball game, that's for sure. Right? Even if the Yankees won, doesn't matter. Right? No, there's no mitzvah. Right? There's absolutely no mitzvah. Bringing a chauffeur, come on. Yeah. That's the cardiac Jew. That is the definition of a cardiac Jew, a cultural Jew. Right? They have a they have a connection to Yom Kippur. Very good. I want to bring a chauffeur, all the Jews. All the Jews, after Yom Kippur. After Yom Kippur went to the ball game. Yeah. Let's say they saw their beloved Yankees win. So this guy brings a chauffeur. He killed two birds with one stone. Yeah, hear the shofar and you're at a ball game. That's pretty bad. That is pretty bad. Yeah, enough said about that. Someone says Chabad.org, it's comparable for Ashkenazi, Monster.org too. I know they have to be careful. Again, they'll bring many things on Chabad.org, according to Ashkenazi custom, but obviously, a lot of things they quote according to Hasidic custom, according to what Babitzer Rebbe, held. So, a lot of the ideas are good, right? Just have to be careful, practically speaking, when it comes to Jewish law, what to do, because a lot of it has to do with what Chabad holds, what the Rebbe held. So, Safari is also very good, right? For more practical, Jewish law, you got to see what they bring down and what their sources are, or whatever. But there are things that Ashkenazim, let's say, won't do that Chabad says you should do, right? Or different customs, different things. So that you got to be careful of. Someone asked, oh, very good. At least I hit something on the T. That's good. Yeah. Let me see any other questions. Again, a lot of the stuff is interesting. I'm not gonna say not, but most of the stuff is just a total distraction, right? Absolute, absolute, distraction. Again, the fact that a Reformed Jew can go to a ball game. Yeah, okay, that's one thing. Like, it's probably the worst transgression they should do. Okay. But you want to show your Jewishness by bringing a shofar, like, it doesn't belong there. It doesn't belong there. There are some stadiums around, around the US that, let's say for a baseball game or something, they have like a Jewish night. Maybe sort of like certain types of Jewish food, like it's a big thing for Jews to go. So it's funny, in a certain way. So like they're getting the Judaism and getting the ball game at the same time, right? So they're killing two birds with one stone. They feel good about the Judaism. They have a Jewish night, whatever, and they're at the ball game. Where they win, they lose, whatever, but they're at the ball game. Yeah, that's the problem, right? I mean, that's that's the essence of the dichotomy. That is the dichotomy right there. You want to be part of things, you want to be part of quote unquote American society, and you want to have some good thing, good vibes about Judaism also. I mean, but so someone who says that this thing went viral. Okay. This video went viral with this guy with the shofar at the ball game. I mean, let's call a spade a spade. Does a chauffeur belong into a stadium? I mean, I spoke about this, a few weeks ago in the book of Leviticus, chapter 18, about going to stadiums in general. Yeah, and about participating in all these things. So you can tell me it's going to the ways of non-Jews is that Torah prohibition, this and that, or whatever it may be. Yeah, bringing a chauffeur there after Yom Kippur, like seriously? Okay, tell me they're Reformed Jew, they don't know very much. This is the cardiac Jew coming out. They feel on, they want to honor the holiday also, blah blah blah. They do it the wrong way, blah blah blah. Okay, but bringing a chauffeur to a stadium, I mean, come on. That's already, that's already too much, right? Also had a multicolored talus. All right. I mean, it's gonna go from bad to worse. That's what it is. Okay. It doesn't belong there. Right? The person themselves don't belong there. That's one thing. Yeah, but they don't know anything. Okay. Now, you want to tell me the worst thing is, by going there, forget about modesty, other issues. The worst thing is you're just wasting time when you could have learned Torah. Okay. Right? I could understand that. Right? There are worse things out there. Good. You're bringing a chauffeur. You're bringing a chauffeur into the stadium. Someone told me a story. They went to a lighting, Chabad lighting of a menorah, Yeah, I think they told me. I could be wrong. I think they told me the lighting was in the parking lot of a stadium. I find that hard to believe. Right? It's probably somewhere wherever it was, and then after that, so that whole organizational thing, they went to a hockey game. So they're asking me like they thought it was a good thing. I was like, why is that a good thing? If you're lighting the menorah and the whole thing is the fight against the Greeks and Greek culture and all that, then how can you go to a hockey game afterwards? They're like, oh, it's a good point. I'm like, thank you very much. Yeah. It defeats the purpose. You light the candles, get all the holiness out of lighting the candles, very good. You look at the candles and then you go see them fight in the stadiums. Right? It's like fighting in a stadium. I'm saying by hockey fights in general, just that's what they do. That's going to their stadiums. That's going according to Greek culture, but the whole point of lighting the menorah is against that. They're like, so why did they take us to a hockey game? Why did they advertise? I said, they want Jews to feel good, whatever. Take them out to a sporting event after lighting the menorah. I don't know. Whatever it is. But doesn't that defeat the purpose? Should defeat the purpose. People do it. Not going to say people don't do it. I've heard people doing it. That's a problem. Right? That would go against exactly what they're doing. Exactly what they're doing. That's a serious problem. Yeah. So again, I'm not going to justify what people do. Yeah. Someone asked me, like, if it's a modern Orthodox synagogue, they go to ball games anyway. Okay, I can't have a claim. That's what they do. They believe you're allowed to go. It's not a problem. This, that. Okay. Should you be there? They'll say it's not a problem. All right. Yeah. Someone says the Roman Colosseum. Good. That's exactly what it is. That's what all these things are. So, I would say in the bigger scheme of things, I don't think it's a bad thing for non-Jews. Why? Because imagine if they weren't, watching these games or busy doing that on the weekends, they'd probably be killing Jews. So it has a purpose. It has a purpose. I'm not saying it's necessarily good for them and their spirit or whatever, but okay, it has a purpose. Jews shouldn't be there. Certainly should bring in, a chauffeur or multicolored tallis or all that. Yeah, 100%. 100% I would agree. But it keeps them off the streets and keeps them from beating up Jews. That's not a bad thing. Keeps them busy all year round. So in the States all year round, keeps them busy. You got baseball, then you got playoffs, and whatever. Then you got basketball season starts, you got hockey season, and it goes the whole winter. Keeps them busy. You got football, I forgot about football, right? Keeps everybody busy. If you're into sports, right? Keep you out of trouble. Should keep you out, it keeps them from beating up Jews. Nothing stops them, but it's, imagine if they didn't have that. What would they do? How would they get their aggressions on? Be worse. So for their sake, even though I would say it's not part of the no-hide laws, it's better non-Jews don't participate in all these things, but it's not forbidden. Certainly not forbidden. But you know what? It keeps them off the streets. 100% it keeps them off the streets. Yeah, and otherwise, what else would they be doing? They'd be hurting us. Someone asks, what is gentle tapping on the heart do during Yom Kippur? Yeah, it's admitting when you say, I have sinned before you, and you hit your chest. It's symbolic, but what's it symbolic of? That your heart caused you to go astray. That's why you do it. Does it calm us? I don't think it calms us. It's not a calming thing, right? Obviously not beating your chest so you have like a heart attack, right? You beat it gently, saying that my heart is the thing that caused me to go astray. Yeah, you're admitting you're doing it to yourself. That's what you're admitting. I don't know. Does that make a person feel comfortable? I don't think so. I think just the opposite. Makes them feel that they have responsibility, huge responsibility, and they're not living up to what they should be doing. Does it disconnect us to the world? No. No, just the opposite. It makes you aware of what you've done. If you think about what you've done, 100%. Makes you more aware. Which is the heart means our emotions, yes. Right? But you remember the eyes see, the heart covets. Right? There's always a disconnect between the intellect, the mind, the soul, and the heart. The mind may know what's right to do, The heart wants to go after whatever it does, right? So there's a disconnect. Knowing what to do and doing it are two different things, right? The heart wants desire, right? That's what the heart wants. Wants to go after whatever the heart wants. And the mind wants to go after Torah, should want to go after Torah. But, a lot of times the heart wins out, right? So there's that. So, so emotionally, what are we drawn to? Fun. We're drawn to things that we enjoy in general. That's what we're drawn to. Since, when a child is born, says the Chobos Avos, in duties of the heart, since a child is born, what happens? All it wants is physical pleasure. When the soul goes into the body, whenever that soul goes in, what's going to happen? Right? You have to strengthen the soul. The soul is a tremendous disadvantage. But Torah can overcome. Torah can overcome all those years of wanting pleasure. Yeah? But it's hard. Right? You need God's help to overcome the inclination. Very good. Right? That's what you need. You need the heart to overcome. You need the, what do you call it? You need Torah to overcome that. Okay. That's not easy. You're dealing up with every second of every day a person wanting pleasure. Yeah, so that constant battle. The eyes mean the minds. The eyes see. What do the eyes see? I see good things. I see bad things. The eyes are not the mind. The mind is the intellect. The eye is not part of the intellect. The eyes see physical things. Yeah. When the eye sees physical things, wants physical things. Wants physical pleasure. Right? So the eye see and directly goes to the heart, and then the heart decides, should I go after it, not go after it, or if it's a bad thing, how do I fight against it? It said, so does that mean it's filling box that we think or look at? Filling something else. Filling a man's gonna put on his forehead, right? And the spot where where baby has that spot till it gets that soft spot, right? Because that corresponds to the mind. Right? And what's the mind represent? Torah. Right? That's what the mind should represent. Right? It's Torah. But it's not on the eye. It says put frontlets between your eyes, not directly on your eyes. It means by the intellect. Where's the intellect? In the mind. In the brain. That's where the intellect is. Not in the eyes. It's in the mind. It's in the brain. How do we change what the eyes see? How do we change what the eyes see? You gotta be careful what you see. Images have, that's why a lot of people when they're outside, yeah, or even if they're driving to the best of their ability, try not to look at signs, that are modest or whatever. Or if they're outside, they keep their eyes down. Certainly men try and keep their eyes down if possible. Why? Because what they can see is bad. How people are dressed, other things. Women also have an obligation, right? When the Torah says in the third paragraph of the Shema, don't go after the eyes. Don't go after the eyes, don't go after the heart. Applies to men and women. Women also have an obligation to guard their eyes. Yeah. So a person's outside, how do you guard your eyes? You look down. You don't look, you try not to look at anything without bumping into things. Right? If you're outside. Why? Because you see modest things. That's exactly the reason. Right? So how do you change that? Well, if you close your eyes, you'll bump into things. That's not good. Right? But you look down. Right? Some people say, well, it's offensive. Men won't look at me. They shouldn't look at you if you're a woman. They look down. They don't want to see anything. Why don't they want to see anything? Very simple. Right? Because of the mind. Because of the heart. And then the person thinks and whatever, and that's a problem. So they look down, they cover their eyes to the best of their ability. Yeah. Any other questions? All right, I'm gonna stop here. I do this every Saturday, 2 o'clock Eastern time, 9 o'clock Israel time. Anyone has any questions, find me on Facebook at Chaim Kaufman, Beyond Orthodox Conversion Judaism, orthodoxconversion.com, Beyond Orthodox Conversion Judaism on YouTube. There I get videos and Q&As. Ethics for Our Fathers, Book of Leviticus. You want to send me an email, rabbichaimkaufman@gmail.com, RBBICHIMCOFFMAN@gmail.com. Now next Saturday night won't be, I'll still be by Sukkot question. Here's I'm going to give a class and I'm not 100% sure, so whatever, put something out there. Otherwise, I'm going to sign out, whichever good. Beginning of the day, middle of the day, end of the day, and everyone have a great